Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. I am Reverend Cindy Grimes with Center for Spiritual Living Ocala, and I am so happy you decided to spend a little time with us this afternoon. I want to tell you a little bit about who we are. So if you don't know CSL Ocala, welcome. This is what we are about. These are our values. This is what is important to us at the Center for Spiritual Living. Number one, spiritual growth and practice. That is why we come together. It's so that we can all learn and grow together spiritually, because that's the basis of everything else. The next thing that is on our list is love. We believe that love is where we come from, and love is what we are made of, and love is what we are here to express. So it too is at the top of our list. We appreciate appreciation, and we appreciate community and coming together, and freedom and creativity and all the other things on that list, right? Health and wholeness, generosity, and financial well-being. And our mission at Center for Spiritual Living Ocala mirrors the mission of our larger organization, which is Centers for Spiritual Living. And we are one of not quite 400. I think it's somewhere in the ballpark of 350, 375 centers that are all over the United States and Canada and the rest of the world. And our mission at Centers for Spiritual Living is to provide spiritual tools for personal and global transformation, like the butterfly coming out of the cocoon. We've all been cocooned up for the past year with COVID, and it's time for us to be that butterfly and start to come out. Our purpose is to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence. And that means that we believe that each one of us comes into this world perfect, whole, and complete, a being of spiritual magnificence. And life sometimes has us forget that. It kind of has a way of beating that out of us. And so we at Centers for Spiritual Living are all about reminding people about the truth of our essence and who we are, and encouraging all of us to be who we came here to be. And our vision then is a world that works for everyone. That means it's a world that works for me. It's a world that works for you and your loved ones, and for people that you have never met and will never meet. It's a world that works for all. And that's what we are working to create, to allow, to expose. And so I have a team of folks that are with me today. We've got a little panel discussion, and we are inviting a new panelist. But before we bring her in, I'm going to bring in Donna Davis. And Donna is one of our practitioners. Hello, Donna.
Hi, how are you
Welcome, my
doing?
love. How are you?
So much bigger than you. Hold on, let me just pop.
I'm like trying to adjust here. Where do I belong?
Hey, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. We had a few challenges signing on this morning, but hey, or this afternoon, whatever time of day it is.
What happened, man? It's like at the last minute me running to go cover my curlers. I'm like, this is some online stuff, man. I just gotta love it. Gotta
That's
love it.
fabulous. Well, you look wonderful. You look awesome. And I'm going to let you pray us in so I can take a breather.
Right.
Thanks, Donna.
All right. So everybody, welcome to Center for Spiritual Living Ocala. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to be here with you today. And I decided to do something a little bit different only because Reverend Cindy came in a little flustered, and then I was a little flustered. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to get really grounded and centered. And since this is one of my spiritual practices that I do, and sharing with you, I'm sure you probably do this too. A lot of y'all do. I use essential oils. See, highest potential. This one's from Young Living, a company that we use, but you can get it anywhere, from the store, from online, whatever. And it just gets me to that Zen, wonderful breathing space. So I use a little bit of that on my hands and just kind of rub it together and just invite you to join me into this grounding moment. Getting very centered into the space that I take up in my chair. I invite you now to just take a few wonderful, clean, cleansing breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. It is from this place of peace and calm that I recognize the allness of God, that this one presence is in and around and through all things. It is the up, the down, the in, the out, the light, the dark. It is night, it is day. It is earth, it is Jupiter, it is the sun, it is all of it expanding. And since I am a part of this wonderfulness that I call God, then I know the same is true for each and every person out there. It's true for people who are on this panel. It is true for the people listening to this word. It is true for those who tune in later. Always expanding, our neighbors, our friends, the animals, the trees, everything is God expressing. And so, in this moment of recognition of the one, I speak my word knowing that as we come together to speak openly, to set this cause in motion, this conversation about our oneness, this conversation about revolutionary love and how we show up in the world, I know that we are getting a different way of being, new ideas expanding through spirit, through these amazing authors, and into our Center for Spiritual Living, going out through our ministers, practitioners, everyone, as we send this message of love and hope and oneness. I know that lives are touched and hearts are open, and the beauty and love and calm and clarity that is God makes itself known. And I'm so grateful for that. I am grateful for the ever expansion of the human race. I am grateful for the unconditional love of the divine. I am grateful for my very soul purpose as I sit in this physical form. I'm grateful for each and every one of you. And I release all of this into the law, knowing that it's always working for the highest and best of all of us. I release it now, and so it is. Amen. Ashe.
And so it is. Thank you so much. I so needed that moment of, whoo, whoosah.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
In the
Thank you.
middle of the day when we're running around doing stuff, we just take that moment and go, I recognize the allness.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
there every time. Easier and easier every time.
Yeah. It illustrates for me so many things. For one, to come in all frazzled, right? So people don't know, like the timer is ticking down and I'm having computer issues and can't get on StreamYard and I'm starting to like literally sweat. And I finally get in and then my mic's not working and the camera's not working. And my girls, my team was like, just breathe, just breathe. We know that everything is in divine right order. And sure enough, it is. And so I thank you for my spiritual community, for my team here, for the people behind the scenes that you all who are watching don't get to see. So, and here we go.
And here we go.
All right, I'm gonna bring in another member right here, and here is Miss Norma. How you
Hello,
doing, Norma?
everybody. I'm good. I'm good. I
Good.
wasn't too sure yesterday, but I'm good today.
Well, it is so awesome to see you both back. I see the familiar backgrounds, and for folks who don't know, you are back from the Big Apple.
Yes, from New York. It was fun. It was interesting. And it was exactly what I asked for. And just remind us to tell. I'm sure we told you, but
Oh no. Can you hear Norma?
I cannot hear her.
Oh, she's gone. Well, while we wait for Donna to come back online and hear a little bit more about her trip, we see Norma's on. I'm going to introduce our fourth panel member today, and that is Miss Leta Perez. Welcome, Leta. Leta is a part of the Center for Spiritual Living. She has been for some years now. I think we figured out it's been about 10 years that Leta has been a member. Leta is an entrepreneur. She is a coach, physical I mean, you do so many different things. You really need to introduce yourself, Leta, and scooch over just a bit. With take your unmute you.
Well, the word powerhouse just describes it all in one thing. That is Leta for real.
Thank you so much. You're so kind. I am a I like to say practitioner, a wellness practitioner. I help those just really come to know their spiritual and their divine magnificence and help them understand that they are in control of creating an extraordinary life. And it
Yeah.
is in their hands. And I just give them that path to wellness or
And
show them.
Leta, for people to know that Leta was integral in my path to wellness. You know, when we met, I was over 100 pounds overweight. And having this amazing woman right here in our community, did some classes with her, helped me get my mind straight, and really got me on a path so that I could release over 90 of those pounds. Still have about 10 to go.
That's great.
Yes, you know, in post-COVID, maybe 15, but a big change from what it was. And so I thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you today and to have this conversation. And it looks like Donna's back.
My
So let's
pleasure.
bring her on in. All right, we're all here. Yay! Awesome. So, gosh, it's been such a rich conversation already around this idea of revolutionary love, which isn't so revolutionary. I mean, it is revolutionary, yes, but it's not like it's new.
Right.
The idea is something that has been around. I mean, this is what Christianity is based off of, right? This idea of loving our neighbors as ourselves. And so it's based on the work of Valerie Kaur, and the book is called See No Stranger. And so we're talking about the entryway, as Valerie lays it out, for this idea of revolutionary love, and that is wonder. It's wonder, you know. So we may not be able to love the other or our opponents, but we can certainly wonder about them and wonder about ourselves. So that's what we've been talking about this month. And I thought we'd start maybe with Leta, just, you know, because everybody else has talked a little bit already this month, so people know them. But why don't you tell us what brings you wonder? When you were a kid, now as an adult, what are the things that open you up for wonder and curiosity?
Oh my, such a loaded question. Thank you so much, Reverend Cindy. What brings me wonder? You know, when I think of the word wonder, I think of awe. So it's not just wonder. It's a wonder of feeling that awe, that inspiration, that amazing understanding of the beauty that is surrounding all of us in every way, in everything, every day, at every moment. And then to be able to recognize that. So I find myself, when I think of wonder, I think of being in awe, you know, and recognizing how much of that is we're surrounded by if we just take that time to stop and take a breath and then let it unfold for us. So
Yeah.
that's what I see.
Thank you. And so, so we've been talking about, you know, about wonder, that entry point, but also about the things that kind of diminish our capacity to wonder or interest in wondering. You know, like, when did things stop for you? I can remember being a kid and just, you know, so excited about everything. And then, you know, little by little, like I kind of said in the intro, it's like life beats you down and you stop being so adventurous, and you hear things like curiosity killed the cat, you know. You learn to like kind of stay in your place, you know.
Right.
So I just want to throw that out there, and let's see, Donna may be joining us again. Let's hope we can bring her back in. Hey, Donna.
Hey guys, I am just having the most interesting time with my internet. It's the strangest thing, but it's okay. I'm back.
Well,
Don't look too askew.
all right. Well, we can see you. So the question was then, what were the things we were talking about, wonder, and the things that start to shut us down from wondering, the idea of, well, actually, we'll go back to what we started talking about last week, and that was the idea of the single story, the danger of the single story,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, we hear things growing up, we might experience things, and then we make up stories about people and situations that kind of take us out of our curiosity.
Right.
Yeah.
It lands us more into our fear than our curiosity.
Exactly. So I don't know how many people got to watch. I think everybody on here got to watch the TED Talk by Chimananda.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to say her last name, but I think we put the link up for people to watch, and it was called The Danger of a Single Story.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And she talked about growing up. I think it was in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, in a middle class family and all, and and then coming to the United States and realizing that people had a very different idea of what life must be like in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Like not expecting her to listen to American music, or wanting to hear her tribal music, or not realizing that they have cities and things just like we have here, and just what a shock that was to her system.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Right.
also a shock to her as to how she had misconceptions about America and Americans, and people over here, and how we would see things. She thought everybody was blonde with blue eyes and drank ginger beer.
Right.
Right.
And talked about the weather,
Mm-hmm.
which they never talked about in Nigeria because it was always the same.
Yep.
That was the other part about her story, was being an author, and how all of the literature that she had been exposed to as a child were English speaking, like white people, and just like all of her characters were that, even though she was living a very different experience.
Right.
So I thought we'd just kind of dissect that a little bit and talk about the experiences, that we've had, as far as believing the single story, either about ourselves or others, just kind of exploring that a little bit. So I know, Donna, because I know one of your stories, I don't, other people might have heard it, but when you came to the United States and how you prepared.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So when I came here, I thought I needed to sound a certain way and look a certain way. So I remember watching the Cosby Show and trying to emulate Rudy, the character Rudy. And my aunt would say stuff like American kids are not polite. So if you meet somebody, don't feel that you need to speak to them or respond. If they ask you a question, just ignore them. And I was like, wow, okay. And I had to learn how to do that. Put gum in my mouth and chew. Yeah.
So
It
for
was
people to understand, why were you working to emulate American kids?
because I came in as an American. I was, one of the kids that was trafficked here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it was to take me out of a very, very dangerous situation with my grandfather.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I started really contemplating suicide. And
Yeah.
so my family, in trying to save my life, brought me here, but they trafficked me here.
Yeah.
And now all those people are past, they've all deceased and gone. But it's like I think about it, I'm so glad that they did that, because had they not, I don't know what would have happened to me. You
And
know.
so to be able to come here and be able to fit into the culture and the society and all, you had to study what would a typical American kid behave like.
Yeah, I
And
had to do the
so your example came from the Cosby Show.
Cosby shows. Yeah,
Right. Right.
because that's what we knew. And I remember my aunt bringing like barrels, like it's a Jamaican thing to do, is to pack a barrel and bring a barrel once a year, especially Christmas time. And my aunt used to bring fruit cocktail and um, frosted flakes and peanut butter and Jello. And man, every single Christmas, I look forward to fruit cocktail with a little bit of ice cream and Jello. And sometimes it was fruit cocktail and ice cream. And it
And
was,
that represented America?
yeah. So when I first came here, I thought, well, the first thing I'm going to get when I come to America is cereal. I'm going to get, and then I got to the cereal aisle and was blown away. And I just kind of stood there for a moment like, oh my God, this is the cereal we knew about was cornflakes. And that was not something you had. It was Christmas that you got it.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a shock. And America, over here, it's like everybody over here lives without a care, and money just kind of grows on the trees. And somehow you should send it to me in Jamaica. It's just expected. You have this never-ending supply. When you have somebody that migrated to America, you have this never-ending supply of money that's coming through this person, and now this person has to now send it to you to save you, to help.
Hmm.
So you become the ATM after a while. Everybody expects a lot from you. But I don't go home very often, because if I go home and I don't have the money to help, then you feel horrible.
So that's kind of danger of the single story there for you and your family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
How
I don't
about you?
get to go home.
Yeah. Leta and Norma, either of you have that, a sense of a single story, like what that story was and how it was just BS, how it may have colored your perception?
Well, I can probably speak on the same show that Donna grew up watching, because I was a poor Black young woman, actually little girl, in the South, where most mothers were single moms and struggling to get things happening and whatever. And when you watch the Cosbys, it set this idea up in your head that that's how people with money live. They're all happy all the time, and they never yell at each other, and it just is this utopic world. And as you get older and you meet other actual people who have money or whatever, and they have regular lives just like us poor folk. So for me, I had kind of that mindset that money fixes all your issues.
Hmm.
And yeah, then it took a little wonder about people that were in those, scenarios, to realize it took actual work, not money,
Mm-hmm.
to get that utopia.
Yeah. Cool. How about you, Leta? Any thoughts on the single story?
Growing up, you say the Cosby Show. I'm trying to think of a show that was all about, the Puerto Rican family. And the only thing that came up was West Side Story. And we were known as gang members. We were known as lazy. Whenever they depicted Latino or Hispanic, it was always lazy, not working, doing drugs. That was the example on television. So there wasn't a show in growing up that I saw that I was familiar with or I could relate with. But my story is different, even though is still good, even though I didn't have that, because my family's so large that my story is being with family and the importance of it, and being molded by the relationships in my immediate family and the people and the cousins and the aunts and the godmothers. And it was always about getting together and having a great time. Every Friday night my mother would have bingo at the house, and all the kids from all her friends would be at the house. It'd be like, it seemed like 100 kids in one house, but we'd be having a blast, just having a great time. And so my story, although it varies in different parts of my life as I'm growing up, and different parts of it were really great and others were not so great.
Yeah.
I find myself fixated on more so in this time of my life on the joy that I experienced in my single story.
Yeah.
And actually, Cindy, as I think about, what I knew about other cultures as a child, there was always, even if there was nothing overtly, you know, prejudiciously said about people, there was always things like, oh, I don't eat Chinese food because they eat cats and rats, or, Germans are just drunks. I don't hang out with them. The general, you know, overall just groupings that we put people in, and it was very prevalent because of all the separation that 50 years ago, that's not as necessarily as prevalent now.
Yeah. Yeah, you both brought up some good points. It reminded me of some things from myself too, because there's the ideas that we get from media, right? Like, and Leta mentioned the ones of Latinos that I grew up with too, but the other one was that the women are fast, right? Easy. That's one of the other things about Latin women supposedly, right? But we just didn't have the examples on TV. So, the single story, there's also something in the absence of a story, right? Like if you're not seeing examples of yourself in media, like where do I belong? Do I even belong? So then there's another danger to the single story, right? And I think I know Valerie mentions this in the book, is the idea that it can make us strange even to ourselves. Like the idea that Shimananda, the woman whose TED Talk we were just talking about, um, how she felt strange to herself because everything she was seeing in literature was from people who had very foreign lives to hers, right? So everybody is then measuring themselves to these examples and the things that we're seeing in media and what's held up as the ideal. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, you're making a lot of sense. And the thing of it is, though, it's interesting because I was thinking just now, did I have any examples of what I was living in my media and in around me? And I really honestly did, because Jamaica had its own TV station, and we had like a lot of poetry, we had a lot of art, we had a lot of celebration of the culture. So we saw that on our TV, but our idea of what America was Cosby Show and that
Mm.
sort of thing. But in Jamaica, we had a very alive, electric culture all around us, like Leta was saying, that just said that this is our story. We kind of passed it on without it being in the media. We did it through the stories, we did it through the dance, we did it through the culture, and that's how we kept our story alive. Now the media is starting to recognize the culture. And I mean, a lot of people had to push for that. A lot of Jamaican people had to push and say, hey, we're going to be seen. And it's a tiny little island, but Jamaica's known because of it. All those people. The same thing with African American culture. And now I think is when the Puerto Rican culture is stepping forward and saying, hey, we need to be seen. And now we have shows and representation that's getting a little better. And now the Asian American culture is stepping forward. So I think it's wonderful that we're living in a time now that the single story is starting to break apart and it's becoming an everybody's story. Yes, we all live in the world and this is who I am. And we're all hungry for it. So you have people out there demanding for it, for us to mix and for us to get to know each other.
Yeah, I think we have to recognize what the single story has done and what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Whether you've seen yourself represented or not seeing yourself represented, or, then there's the stereotypes, right? Like the stereotypes of Jamaicans. So you have to be a dancer, you got to be into music, and you work, a half a dozen jobs, right? Like, and then if you're not in that stereotype, or if you're an Asian American, and we know the stereotypes about Asians being smart and, business and this and this. So what if you're not about that? What if you're not a scientist, right? Or what if you're a tall black man and you don't want to play basketball? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when you don't fit the box, the mold, right? Like the pain that's in that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of ways that the single story just, you know,
Yeah.
it's just doesn't do anybody justice, really.
No, and it takes, especially young people. I remember specifically when I first came to the United States, I was in New York with my aunt and my cousins, and they had these girls they hung out with, and I wanted so badly to be friends with somebody because I was all by myself. And they teased me because I didn't sound Jamaican. And at the time, I didn't have locks, and I didn't smoke weed, and I didn't have all these stereotypes that I should have clicked somehow. And because I didn't speak patois, like raw patois all the time, suddenly I couldn't be Jamaican. And I wasn't Jamaican and I wasn't American, so what am I? And they used to just torture me about this, call me bougie and all this other stuff. So I found myself shutting down to the Black culture. And I started to push against it. And then I didn't have any friends that were Black. And it was just shutting down that part of me that said that, yes, I'm valid. I suddenly didn't fit. And then I felt like I almost did it to my kids because they were biracial children. So now they're definitely not in this camp or in this camp. And so I had to infuse a lot of love and expose them to as much stuff as possible growing up so that they would not endure the torture that I did. They would feel like a part of something.
Right, right. So, gosh, there was so many questions I wanted to explore today, but one of them was whose stories do we trust the most? You know, like whose stories do we relate with the most? I'm going to say like a generality.
Yeah. Whose stories do we often see as valid or trustworthy?
Yeah, yeah.
People of influence,
Mhm.
people that has the farthest reach, I think, with
Mhm,
their story. I think tend to have more, there's a strength in numbers. So the
mhm.
more people that, can be reached by what they got going on is one that seems to stick.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And conversely, too, those is when those people look like us, I think. Because for me, the people with the farthest reach and then they look like me, I tend to adopt their story and say, oh, this is where I need to be because this feels good to me. This person's valid, therefore if I follow what they're doing, I can get there too.
Yeah. Right. There's the power of the example,
Mm-hmm.
right? Somebody else did it, so I can do it. Like,
Yeah.
look,
Exactly.
yeah.
Well,
And you
it's
know what you were saying, Norma, about how we give our attention and we trust people that have, big audiences or, money, status, whatever it is. Um, and all of those things don't necessarily mean that that's somebody worth following, right?
correct.
Exactly.
Right.
Correct.
But yet we all do it. I mean, I did it myself here recently. I gave somebody probably more credit, than I really should have because they had some letters next to their name, So you give more consideration, you give
Mm-hmm.
more weight maybe to what they say or what they do because, either they have money or they have influence or, they have the title,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like the flip side of the opposite, right? Of putting somebody down
Mm-hmm.
because of whatever, that we're lifting people up because of something else that's arbitrary that is not deserving either.
And even if they do deserve it, though, it's a lot of pressure to put on someone to say that I can't, and that comes with its own thing. Like, I can't possibly not live up to this. I mean, we're seeing this right now in our culture. I mean, in our communities, that big interview with Meghan Markle and Oprah,
Mhm,
a
mhm,
huge thing. Why can't they just have a family that doesn't get along? I mean, there's lots of people who have families that don't get along. Why is it now a big thing? Why
mhm,
can't there be conversations in those families? Sit down and say, hey, how do you feel about this? It's a completely new idea to that family.
mhm.
There's a gentle way to approach that, but instead it gets blown into this big thing simply because we have these people up on this pedestal. You cannot possibly react in a human way because when you do, wow, an entire world is coming at you.
You know, I think that it's proven also that it doesn't matter the prestige in your life or where you live, or that all of us have challenges in our families. So just because you're royalty doesn't mean that you don't have discussions that are uncomfortable. You know, just because it's not only for the ones who are, you know, the poorest of the poor. We all have our levels of coping mechanisms and situations in our families. So that's what it's also shown us, is that, hey, so you're having a hard time too? Welcome to the club.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. You know, Shimananda had an awesome quote, and I'm going to read it here for you guys. I think I might have it on the slide, but I'll read it first. She said, stories matter. Many stories matter. Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity. When we reject the single story, when we realize that there is never a single story about any place or any people, right, we regain a kind of paradise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So I guess then, you know, our question, because we'll have to be closing here soon, is what do you think is possible for us? What's possible? It's a two-part, right? What's possible for us as individuals, but what is also possible for us as a nation when we let go of that idea of the single story and go back to practicing wonder, right? What's possible for us out of practicing wonder individually and collectively?
Well, I think it'll be the beginning of rehumanization of people not like ourselves, which is the first step to wander. And then, of course, you know, once you wander, then that just opens up the whole gambit of how are we alike? What all is there? Who are these people? Why are they? How are they like me?
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to more equality.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I personally think that that's when we will get to that space of, you know, creating a world that works for everyone. Because it'll be taking, if we start to see each other instead of just the thems that I'm against this other, you know, and we begin to wonder about everybody, then I believe that that's going to open up the entire world instead of it just being the one little box that you live in. The entire world now becomes available to you. And people who travel and have adventures like that get to experience that on a regular basis. And if more and more of us are doing it, then more and more of us will get a richer and richer life, even if we never leave our little town. You know, when somebody that's different or new comes in, now you have this bigness that can happen as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think I'll piggyback off of that. Yeah. Because I think it does. It creates so many new possibilities. I mean, you just don't even know where to start, right? You know, if we gave up that idea of the single story and gave people the space to show up and be themselves, right? To be ourselves, number one, but also to give other people the space to be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a problem that we could not fix. There's not a challenge we wouldn't be up for, right? If we could give people that space. What do you want to say, Leta?
Well, you know, I was looking for the Science of Mind magazine because it was speaking about how, you know, being connected and humanizing each other in the reading today, but I couldn't find it and I wanted to read it. But what I will say is this, you know, seeing no stranger, could you imagine what a nation of seeing no stranger would be like? There wouldn't be that border. Everything would open up. You know, when I think about wonder and seeing no stranger, I think about walking past a border and in an openness and being able to see them as us, seeing them as you know, God. We are all God, and that's what the story was in the Science of Mind magazine. So I agree with everything that was said here today. I really enjoy listening to all of it, and I think we have an opportunity, and we owe it to ourselves and to each other to not be the stranger any longer, and
Mm.
to let go of that single story and see more to it than that.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that. Thank you, ladies. Love this conversation. This was the first month, in talking about wonder. Next month for April, we're going to be talking about the idea of opening ourselves up to grieving with others,
Mm.
right? Like letting yourself feel, the pain, which I don't know how popular that's going to be, but it's certainly necessary. I think that we're seeing right now we have seen with COVID what happens when we don't have the space to grieve, when we don't have those collective places with so much loss, that I think it's an important thing to address.
Yeah, definitely.
So I thank you again, each one of you, for being here. And it's going to be fun over the next months, to
Yeah,
back
absolutely.
these conversations.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
And I hope everybody can be on the Zoom call. And if you can't, I understand. But, we'll be having a Zoom conversation after this. And we don't record that. That's so people can come on and share their prayer requests and just talk about the subject matter, how it applies for them. But it's not recorded, so nobody else sees it. It's our own little safe place to chat and to unpack things a little bit more. So I hope you can make it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
All right, awesome. Well, we will see you later, and I'm going to go ahead and close us out. Thank you, ladies. Love ya.
Love
Love
you.
you too, Rev.
All right, well, that was very fun. So let's see, what we do now is going to make our request for those of you who would like to support our efforts at the Center for Spiritual Living financially. We accept help. Actually, in any way you can offer it. If you live in the Ocala area and want to stop by the center and do some yard work, we would welcome that as well. So let's see. It is time for us to give thanks, and let me get our affirmation up here. And also to let you know how you can donate to the Center for Spiritual Living. We have a couple of ways you can do that. One of them is called Text to Tithe, and that is the number that is scrolling across the screen at the bottom. What you do is send a text message with the amount of money that you want to donate. So you text 352-320-5110, and you put in the amount and you hit send, and it goes from your account to ours. Or you can go to cslocala.org/donate, and or you can do it snail mail. There's lots of ways. Anyway, I am going to share this affirmation with you. I'm going to invite you to make it yours, and just think about this as you go through the week. It is the nature of life to give of itself. As it is the tree's nature to bear fruit and the flower's nature to bloom, it is my nature to share the gifts of my time, talent, and treasure. I participate in the divine flow of life, giving generously and receiving abundantly. I am blessed and I am a blessing. I am grateful. Yes, I believe that I am a blessing, and I believe that you are too. And I'm just affirming that as you go through your week this week, that it's very clear to you that you are a blessing to the people whose lives you touch, your loved ones, and as you go in that kind of ripple effect out to the people you work with and the people you come in contact with in the grocery store, in the post office, and wherever you are, that you just get that feeling and that knowing deep in your bones that you make a difference in the lives that you touch. And let's see what else we want to put up here. I think we're going to do our prayer for protection, but let me make sure before we do that, I'm going to put the Zoom link in the chat. One moment here. Too many things going at one time. So let's put the Zoom information for those of you who want to join us in Zoom. The number is 637-667-6986. 6847, and the password is spiritual. If you have Zoom, you just plug in that number, 637-667-6847, password spiritual, and you will be in our Zoom space. And let's see, I'm going to do our prayer for protection, but I'm also was just reminded as I talked about people donating to the center that we do have some members right now that are having some difficulty, physical difficulty with doing some yard work. And so if you have a little time on your hands, if you enjoy doing yard work, please do give me a call. And we've got some volunteer opportunities here at the center and also with members of our spiritual community. And so that leads us to our prayer for protection. And this comes from James Dillett Freeman and our friends at Unity. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And I just pray and affirm that all is well as you go into this next week, and that any challenges you may have turn into stepping stones to your greater yet to be. And I look forward to seeing you either on Zoom or on our broadcast next week. Have a fabulous week, everyone. Take care of yourself. Love and blessings.